One. Today is March the 30th, 2024. Welcome again to another educational video courtesy of investingsuccess.ca. In this video, I want to continue my look at the German-American astrologer Georg Bayer, who came to the United States in and around 1900, came with a powerful knowledge of astrology, never really said where he had obtained this knowledge in Germany. And he proceeded to live in New York City, made a modest, comfortable living for himself, trading wheat futures on the Chicago Board of Trade, and never really aspired to become filthy rich. He just made a comfortable living and didn't ever have to take a job, and that actually sustained him, all the way through those Depression years, just playing the swings on Chicago wheat, making a little bit here and there, and he did it all using astrology. And towards the end of his trading and investing career, he wrote a series of books, published them, and I have now uncovered a few of them. And this guy was not the showman that Gann was. He very quietly went about his business and unveiled in his writings a series of what I call Bayer's rules, and there's about 48 of them. Not all of them are directly applicable to the way the markets behave in this day and age, but there are some that are wickedly powerful. And today I want to show you one of the rules, his rule number 22, that seems to work quite well. And so this rule number 22 involves the planet Mercury. So let's take a closer look. Now, before you could start applying his rules, of course, you need data, planetary data, and you can go to your local bookstore and you can buy ephemeris books, ephemeris tables. You can also go online to organizations like astro.com and look up the tables online. Or if you do happen to have a piece of software, and I use the Optima software package, and it's got an astrology module built right into it. If you happen to have something like that, that works extraordinarily well. All right, so let's get right down to business here. Mercury goes around the sun in 88 days. At least that's what it would appear to you if you were standing on the sun, watching the various planets go around the sun. So Mercury, 88 days. You would see the planet Earth going around the sun in 365 days. And if you were observing all of this activity from a vantage point on the sun, there will be times when you will see Mercury perfectly aligning with the planet Earth. And it's only going to be a short number of days when that alignment occurs, because Mercury is going quite a bit faster than the planet Earth. And in the course of a calendar year, you might get 3 or 4 of these events. Now, when Mercury aligns to the Earth from a vantage point on the sun, we call that an inferior conjunction. And Mr. Georg Bayer said to pay particular attention to these inferior conjunction events. Now, from our vantage point here on Earth, we know that Mercury goes around the 12 signs of the zodiac in 116 days. There will be a few times every year when Mercury will move past Earth because it is moving faster. And at these events, when Mercury goes whizzing by Earth, we momentarily think we see Mercury moving backwards relative to the constellation stars in the nighttime sky, but we only think that. It's physically not moving backwards. It's kind of an optical illusion. I explain all of that in my 2024 Financial Astrology Almanac. Now, these events, when we think we see Mercury moving backwards, are what we call Mercury retrograde. And to the ancient peoples, the ancient Babylonians and ancient Egyptians, these events where they thought they saw Mercury moving backward, those were very significant events in their society. And they planned, major festivals around these events. They planned times of invasion, war. And what's interesting is these retrograde events occur during inferior conjunction events. So you're going to see that on a chart here very shortly. And so, as I said, Mr. Bayer made his living trading wheat futures on Chicago, and he said, watch for times of Mercury inferior conjunction, because quite often you're going to get some kind of a trend change on the price chart. The trend change might not always be hugely significant. It might be a fairly modest change of trend, but he said you're going to get something. Now let's have a look and see if he was right. So here's a chart of wheat futures. This one starts back in May of 2022. And you can see at the right-hand side of the chart that I have overlaid it with the red vertical bar. That is your actual timing for your inferior conjunction. And the purple colored rectangle behind it is the Mercury retrograde event. So you can see the inferior conjunction occurred during Mercury retrograde. Now here's a classic example of what Bayer talked about. Look at the trend change. Significant. And when the trend changed, wheat was trading at nearly $13 a bushel, and it ended up turning trend, and it came down a few months later to trade just above $7 a bushel. That was a major haircut. Middle of the chart, September 2022, you can see that there's an inferior conjunction event, and of course right in the middle of retrograde. And then right towards the end of retrograde, just, 1, 2, 3, about 6 trading sessions after the inferior conjunction event, you had a trend change and the price of wheat declined further. Right-hand side of the chart, there's another one, but this one in December 2022, January 2023, was pretty minor as trend changes go. So that's what Bayer basically said. You're not going to always get the big trend change moves, but you're going to get something. Now, continuing on with our look at wheat futures, early part of May 2023, you had another inferior conjunction event in and amongst a retrograde. And yeah, you had a little trend change there as well, enough certainly to institute a trade on. And you can see that the trend changed. It rallied for several trading sessions, and then it completely fell apart. You had another trend change in early September of 2023, and this was a fairly minor one. And you can see that the price of wheat had been coming down, and when the inferior conjunction event arrived, the wheat price of wheat actually gapped up significantly, caught a lot of people off guard, I'm sure, but then it proceeded to come back down. So you got to be fairly quick on your feet, ideally using perhaps an hourly chart to catch the full extent of these things. And at the right-hand side of the chart, you can see that in December of 2023, there was another inferior conjunction event along with Mercury retrograde. And you can see that the trend changed, and it fell from, what was it at, about $6.40 a bushel, and it came down to the $6 level. So not huge, but enough to make a little bit of a trading profit. Now I want to overlay what I'm talking about here with one of the previous rules that Mr. Bayer laid down. So recall from one of my earlier videos, he said that if you identify on a price chart a significant high, And it doesn't have to be, in the past month or so. It can be a significant high from over a year ago. So I found one on the price of wheat, and from that significant high, I asked the software program to overlay for me the intervals of when Venus had moved 34.5 degrees. This is what Bayer called his rule number 14. Okay, and you can see that when Venus makes these 34.5 degree interval moves, very often closely associated with that is some kind of a minor trend change. So there's one in December of 2023. Here's another one in late December 2023. Here's one in January 2024, and basically the price of wheat had been going up. It came down a bit, and this Venus interval just caused it to go sideways for a while before it ultimately fell. It rallied, and then it rolled over on itself, picked itself up a little bit, but right at this February 26th Venus interval, look what it did. Fell apart. The trend kept going down. Lately, it's been rallying. We had a Venus interval on the 25th of March, just a few days ago, and you can see that the price of wheat at that interval pulled back. It rallied as of Thursday, and right now we're at a critical juncture. If it is going to go higher, it has to take out this previous swing high. So we've got to break this purple dashed line. That's basically one of Gann's trading rules. We've also got to get the stochastic crossing over positive. We've got to get that green line above the blue line. That's going to confirm the buy signal. And if we can do that, in all likelihood, you're going to see the price of wheat move a little bit higher. Now let's see how this all ties in with our inferior conjunctions. And here we go. The next inferior conjunction is going to be in about 10 days, but look at Mercury turns retrograde on Monday, April 1st. So some very strange and unusual things can happen during Mercury retrogrades, and these can be often accentuated by the inferior conjunctions. And so even though we've got, this Venus 34.5 degree interval potentially pointing to a buy signal, I would be very careful here. Things could get a little squirrely as Mercury retrograde sets in on Monday, April the 1st, followed shortly thereafter by the inferior conjunction. Now let's take a look at a few other chart types here, if we may. Here's a chart of gold futures. And you can see in September 2023, here's the inferior conjunction event with Mercury retrograde. Price of gold, look at what it did. It fell apart. Here's another event in December 2023, and yes, there was a trend change and a pullback of over $100 an ounce. And here we go again. Mercury's going to turn retrograde, and then we've got this inferior conjunction event. And I've also got this chart overlaid with the Venus 34.5 degree intervals from a previous significant high on gold. And you can see in October 14th of 2023, one of these intervals landed, and shortly thereafter the price of gold topped out and it pulled back. And that bottom that it made several days after there was another Venus interval, and gold moved pretty sharply to the upside. It fell back, and then we had another one of these Venus intervals, and it had a little rally, but it ran into difficulty at the inferior conjunction. And it pulled back. It had some pretty good intraday volatility at the next Venus interval. and it had an interim swing low at the next Venus interval. It had a little swing high at the next Venus interval. And on the 6th of April, I'm expecting the next Venus interval. Look at what gold has been doing lately. It's been plowing higher. It's tempting to buy it here, but it's even more tempting just to wait for a little bit here and see just what is going to happen when Mercury goes retrograde on Monday, followed by the inferior conjunction. And it contained right within this mess is the Venus interval. So I think we're going to see some kind of a trend change on gold here coming up very shortly. Here's a chart of the S&P 500 futures, and of course, the S&P is horribly complicated, very much overweighted and dominated by, call it what you want, the Magnificent Seven, the Magnificent Five. I don't know what the hell they call it this day and age, but you've got the Nvidia factor in there, and things have just been a little squirrely. However, take a look at the inferior conjunction events. So if we go back to May of 2023, inferior conjunction, Mercury retrograde, and you had a powerful little rally on the S&P 500. In September of 2023, you had your next inferior conjunction event, and the market took a little while, but it ultimately peeled off and moved lower after that. You had your next inferior conjunction in December of 2023. There was a stretch in there where the market really wasn't sure what it wanted to do. It kind of hit an interim little top and it started to pull back. But then the Magnificent Seven decided they were going to rule the roost, as it were. And since then have been pushing the markets dramatically higher. I've got one of these Venus 34.5 degree intervals coming up on April 5th, which is next Friday. Mercury turns retrograde on Monday, April 1st. So we've got a collision of sorts coming at us here. And I think we're probably due for some kind of a pullback. I'm not looking for anything disastrous at this point. As I've been saying in some of my writing, I am looking for this pullback. And then we've got, in the month of May, Jupiter going into the sign of Gemini. That's classic 1937 Louise McWhirter stuff. And that should lend a fairly positive tone to the economy. And I'm looking for this pullback of some sort. And then for the duration of the year, I'm thinking that we're going to do reasonably well, and the markets should actually broaden out a little bit instead of just focusing on 7 tech stocks. Here's a chart of the Dow Jones, smaller number of stocks. Similar kind of story, getting a little bit extended, but we've got April 2nd is one of my Venus 34.5 degree intervals. April 1st is when Mercury goes retrograde. April 10th is the actual inferior conjunction. So again, a collision of events coming at us here on the Dow. Let's just see what happens. And here's a chart of NASDAQ futures. Right about now, this weekend, even though the markets are closed, the Venus 34.5 degree interval is landing. And of course, first thing Monday morning, we're right into Mercury retrograde, followed by the inferior conjunction event. So again, a collision of some sorts for a market that has been continually pushed higher and higher by 7 big tech stocks. And so the technique involving Venus moving 34.5 degree intervals from a significant high, that's what Bayer called his rule number 14. And as I've just showed you, the potential for trend changes at Mercury inferior conjunctions is one of the things that Bayer looked at. He called it his rule number 22. And so I encourage you to apply both of these rules And always, always, always use technical chart analysis like a stochastic or the true strength indicator. Always make sure that the trend is changing, and do what you must, whether you take a long position, a short position, or if you do like I do and you start selling naked put or call options to bring in some premium. Do what you have to do, and make a little bit of extra money for yourself and have fun doing it. All right, that's it for me for today. So don't forget to visit me at investingsuccess.ca. Subscriber numbers are growing on my astrology letter and my cycles report. I do post from time to time on Substack, and I'm thinking about putting together a course on Udemy to complement what's already there. And I think this next one might strictly talk just about cycles, and that would include a lot of Georg Bayer's stuff. So thank you kindly for taking time out of your schedule to watch this video, and I do hope you have some fun applying Bayer's rule number 14 and rule number 22. We will talk real soon once again. Have a great day. Thank you.